I think most of you have joined. Um, so, I'm just copy pasting here. So without sharing and with sharing. Okay. No, fine. So with sharing, when you're having any kind of interaction with the DB, it depends on the particular S object, whether you're having access to that records or not. Based on the record level access in particular S object, the result will be different when you're using a with sharing class. And when you're using a without sharing, that means like you are not restricting the sharing need to be considered, and we call it as a system mode when you're using a without sharing called a system mode. Usually in interviews also it being asked like what's the difference between a user mode or a system mode, or even you can use that terms while explaining the with sharing and without sharing. And there is some context that it can be asked uh, like this is a class, right? Usually in the Apex triggers there is a no concept called with sharing, then how the code being executed in the Apex triggers, and there is no concept there for a visual force pages and lightning components, how it behaves there. So they will put questions in a different formats, but you have to uh, think only we have a control only in the Apex classes. Okay. Um, Next. So I think this so far we covered like access modifiers and then sharing and then class and then class name. And if it's going to implement any interface or extending any other class, we're going to just mention this keyword and give the class names over here. Similarly, how we have used the below, the same way, if we have any implements or extents, we're going to use here after the class name, and then the ball followed by your class body. Now, jumping on to the Apex variable. So here, like we have seen some variables being declared and all right here. Sorry, these are all methods. Yeah, here you have seen some variables has been declared, right? Like on when we were discussing in the last session, like what are the data types? Okay. So when we having data types as well, there we have seen like declaring variables. Then how the syntax it should be. There it is a syntax. That is access modifier of it, or like whether it's static or non-static, and the data type and a variable name. And if you're going to assign the value, then what is the value you're going to assign? Okay, first we will see like how the access modifier of the class it's having, on top of it's having a one more called a protected is one. These are the private and protected. Both of them as a meaning as almost same, but there is a slight difference when we having a protected values. Mm, I will explain you the tomorrow. Exactly, I was not able to recollect what exactly the difference is. And public, it's going to be the same as how we have defined here, but the public means you can access that way. So first of all, I will explain the private. Private variables means where, so variable where we define within the class, right? If you write a class and inside the class, we'll write a variable. Without the class, there is no variable exist, right? So when you define a variable as a private variable, it is going to be used within that class, nowhere else outside the class. Let's say The class is a blueprint of an object. So you create one object out of the class, and whether you access in that object or not, no, you cannot. Still, that is outside the class only. So within the class, that means you having some methods or like any other things within the class. So within the class only, you can use the private variables. You cannot use outside the class. So public variables are you can use within the class and outside the class. Like when you create an object of that class also, you can access only if you add that variable name as a public, access modifier as a public. Same as a global also, similar to a class. Like even the variables can be accessed outside of the Salesforce instance or outside of your namespace. Then only, if you mention the access modifier as a global for a variable, then only you can access that variable. Even though when you create a object of the class and you want to access the variables, only if the access modifier is a global, then only you're going to use it. Now, final and static. So this concept, like it need a little background again. So I will explain. So there will be a static classes and then static methods as well. So these will behave a bit different from like what we have explained so far. So we'll come back to this final and static variables and methods later, and followed by the variable name and the value. So in simple terms, okay, sorry, before that, so if you not mention any access modifier, the default value picked up is a private, like how it will be for class, it will be same for the variable as well. The private will be a default access modifier if you're not mentioned, or like if you mention whatever it is, it will be there. If you're not mentioned, the private will be the default access modifier for the variable. Okay, it might be a bit confusing. So I prefer you to practice write some sample classes with the syntax. So you will be familiar with the syntax and how you have to write, whether you need to curly braces or like open parentheses, or what should become first, what should come next. These are all will be get familiar only if you have practiced some samples. So we'll get started with some classes, how to write classes and variables so that it will be getting familiar with you. So first, for writing a class, what should be a starting point? The access modifier. So public, I'm just using a public access modifier. Then what is we are going to most commonly use, with or without sharing? So I'm using a with sharing class. And then what is the next keyword? Is going to be a class, and then name of your class. Let's say I'm going to just write class name as a account info, and then curly braces. So if you observe, there is no function symbol here like this. It will not be there while you're writing a class. After writing a class, you're going to only have a curly braces only. Okay. And if you are implementing or extending some other interfaces or um, virtual classes, then only you will be having something here. Otherwise, normally the class name is going to be a last. Okay. Now, once you have your class structure ready, so that's all it required to create a class. Then, after creating a class, so what are all as part of a class? So what is seen as a variables, public, string, the data type, and the name of the variable. Let's say account name is the name of the variable, and then just I will use it. public, and then I will give a decimal, and I will say account revenue. So I have a two variables in this class, and I will say I'm going to write some method here, public, mm, method name. Let's say I am going to just take a normal function called addition. So we have not discussed about syntax of method. So before I'm jumping on here, just I'm going to step back and explain the method syntax. So method syntax is going to be again same set of access modifier, and it could be a same like a static or a final, and then um, a return type, and then your method name, and followed by like this. And here you can have parameters. It can be any number of parameters, or it could be no parameters also possible. And based on your return type, you have to return the value over here, and your logic will go here. Here, everything is same, like access modifier, like how you're going to access this method in your class based on this access modifiers. And for the methods, there are like two extra things will be there. Like if it's a variable, you're having a data type and name to it. And in a method, you have a method name, and you have two things for data types. One, the what's the value it's going to return, what's the data type of the that's going to be written from a method, and what are the data types that are part of a parameters of the method. So these two are optional. It's not mandatory to have a return type and mandatory to have a parameter. It's not a mandatory. Either you can have a return type, or if you don't have any return type, what you have to mention is you have to mention a name called a void. That means you have to mention it explicitly, otherwise it will not understand. If you don't have any return type, then you have to mention it as a void, then only system will understand, okay, this method not having any return type. When you having a void, there is no need to mention a return type. So this symbol is used to comment the code. That means it's not going to execute that line when you are using this forward slashes twice. Then it's that means like this line is going to be not used or like not executed. Okay, so when you have any return type, you have to specify or like mention the return statement with the same data type, then only you are allowed to save the method. Okay, and the parameters. So here there is nothing called a void here. Either you can have the parameters, or you might not have it. So if you have it, just mention the parameters. If you don't have, just keep it blank. That's it. How the method syntax is going to be. So I'm going to give one example here as a method. So addition, I think somewhere in the, before this also we have shown some methods. So here addition, just I will say integer a equal to some number, and then again integer b equal to some number, and I'm just trying to print the some of these values. So addition of the A comma B is colon and then concatenating the value integer c equal to A plus B, and then here I'm just printing the value as C. Okay, what is a system debug? System debug is used to debug the values. That means when the code is being executed, there is nothing in a system debug, just it will print whatever there in the system debug will be printed in your log. Okay, what is a log? The log is when you're trying to execute a piece of a code, then it's called a transaction. Not only executing a code, whatever the user input is started, and from that starting point, whatever the logics it's being done as the initiation of that click, and till the point you see the result in the end, or like a front end user, it could be a result, or like then it could be a navigation, anything that initiated by the end user. It could be a button click or any user or form input, anything that manually or like any automated thing which will start the process. And when the process being started, till the time the process get ended, till that point from the process start to process end is called a transaction. Whatever it's being executed in between these 2 points called a transaction. Let's say mm, so I built a one page. Okay, so I have built one page here. So the square is going to be my page, and there I have given two inputs over here, two inputs, and then my expectation is to input 1, input 2, and then I want to see the result. Okay, so let's say this is my a page that I have built. Okay, so what my expectation? So I will enter the some number over here. Okay, I have entered the number. Okay, before I enter the number, so there are some, again, some change to my page I want to see. Okay, calling it as a submit. Okay, so I have to give the two inputs, and then I have to give the submit, then it will do a addition for me. So that's what my functionality that I have built so far. Okay, fine. So then how I'm going to, like, where we call a transaction, that's what I'm trying to explain here. So I have given two numbers and click a submit. So what I'm trying to do in the submit, I am taking the values of these two inputs to my method. In my class, I'm having a method, so I'm taking this two variables to my method, and I pass these two values, and there will be some logic which will help me to calculate the addition of these two numbers, and it will return the value, and I'm going to display the value over here in the bottom. So from the time I click on this button, and it will go to the Apex class and the method, and it will do a addition, and it return the value as the result, and I print the value. Till the time, all I call it as an action, sorry, a transaction. Similarly, when you are consider you are creating a account record. Okay, so when you are creating an account, so there will be a some fields that you have to fill, correct? Like account name, what's the revenue, company name, company address, key contact, anything, blah blah blah. You have some information to fill, and then there will be some required fields, there will be some optional fields, whatever there. Once you have done everything, you have a option to save the record. Okay, when you click on save, like what will happen? So first it will check what are the required fields are there, whether all of them are filled or not. If any of the custom validations, all of them are correct or not. And then it will go for any of the automations, like you have any workflows or process builders or flows. If any of them are there, it will check and it will execute all of them. If it is a parent or child record, let's say if you're creating a child record, for example, and based on the record you created, it roll up the values to the parent record. And if you have any email alerts, it has to send the email alert. If you having any of the rules, like assignment rule, auto response rule, escalation rules, all these rules will get executed. And assignment rules, if you have to assign to some other user, every logic that has to execute once you have done, if there is anything. So everything is completed, and then you navigate to that record detail page. Till that part, from the start of this is a saving, and it's not directly going to dump into database and save, but any of your logics are coming in between, it will execute everything. And if it is successful, then only it will navigate to your page. Otherwise, again you will be stay on the same page saying something has been failed or something as not as expected, with some message. So what will happen as a transaction, if some failure happen, whatever you started again, everything will be rolled back, and you will be on the again the starting point where you got started. So thing was, when you started anything until you get result, we call it as a transaction. And if anything fails in the transaction, it will be rolled back. If it's the standard things, again we have some controls again. If you don't want to roll back the things, and if you want to handle that exceptions, and you want to have a different kind of handling without rollbacking, that also you can do. That again we'll come back, but I'm trying to explain what does the transaction mean. um, Till the you give some point click or any change of the record that you're doing, until the point that you initiated the process to the end of that process is called a transaction. If it's a custom page, what are the logic it's being executed until it completes that execution is a transaction. Okay, again I'm going back here and I'm trying to explain. Okay, maybe I have jumped a bit apart. So when you have this transaction, what will happen for a transaction? There will be a log created in the backend. So what happened in the each step, in which order it happened. So it will be generated one file called a log, where it will include everything, and we have option to set the log levels also. How deepest you want to look at the log also, you have option to set. I will show everything. So in that log, you want to print something. You want to print some values of your variables in your method. If you want to add, you can add the system debugs. It is not part of any of your code logic. The system debug only used to print the values in your logs. That's all. So let's say you have been this value assigned directly in this method, correct? And you have added the value. So what is the value of C? You don't know, right? Because you know 12 and you know the input, both values you know, that's fine. Once you do the addition, you don't know what is the value of the C, and you want to see what value is being stored in C. How you can do? You can print the value here. You can directly just use like this also, it will work. But okay, it in the log when you look at it may be hard for you to, you don't know the value itself, right? So how you can search in that log, it will be hard for you. So if you add some content, and then so how you concatenate, using this plus symbol you can concatenate the value. Even though it is integer, it will take care of it. We are not doing actual operation here, just where this plus is being used as a concatenate, not actually the addition here. So it's not an issue. So we will add some text so that we will understand and easy for us to search, and then followed by the value in the C. That's how we use the system debug to see the values to be printed in the logs. Okay, addition. So I have a method and all. So if it works or not, it will not work. Why? Because I have not mentioned any return type of it. If I don't have any return type, I have to mention it as a void. No, if I have value, a value I'm going to return is an integer, then I have to mention it. It's going to be a data type of the return will be a integer. Once I mention the return type, I have to return that value as well. Then only it will allow me to save the method. So I have to mention the what I'm going to return based on the return type I have mentioned. Okay. But in this method, I don't have any parameters. So if I want to write a method which is going to be allowing some parameters. So addition with params, let's say. So here I'm going to use sorry, integer, and then integer is a comma, integer is going to be a b, and then I'm not having any of these values, and this is going to be my second method. Okay, so here I'm trying to explain you how to write a class. So this is going to be a basic class. You can give a access modifier, then followed by a with or without sharing. If you not mention anything also, it will be treated as a with sharing class, and then class and class name. Then if you have any variables, then variable names, and if you having any methods, a methods name. A variable syntax will be like this, and method syntax will be like this. um Now let's try to create some classes in Salesforce. So far we doing everything in a notepad only, but let's see how to create a classes. In simple terms, there are two ways of creating a Apex classes. One is going to a developer console and creating the classes, and one is from the setup. So here in this wheel, we have an option called a setup, and we're already in the setup, so nothing new here, it's opening. So it will be on the setup homepage, and here in the quick find box, search apex space class. Then you see the Apex classes, what are all Apex class already exist. You can see them, and on top of it sorry, you can see option to go to a developer console and option to create new and generate from WSDL, run all tests. So no need to worry about all this. So you can understand this too. Developer console, like there is another navigation to open this page from here, and there is an option to create a new class from here. Create a new, and then you will be having directly a class over here. So we don't have an option to select the class name, but we have to write in the class. Okay, so I'm just giving this class to copy over there and see whether I have any errors over here or not. I'm not sure. Let's see. So there are no errors. So it got saved. Fine. So if you observe, you have not given name to it, but it has taken the name. So what is the name of the class is being the name what you have given here. Okay, I want to change here. Let's say I'm not info. I will say this as my first class. Okay, I'm trying to give a space. Whether it will allow or not, let's see. Okay, okay, it's saying it's giving some error with the this curly brace because we're having error over here. Okay, I'm not given any space and trying to save. You see, the name is automatically changed to my first class. Whatever the name that you gave here, it will automatically change to a name. Okay, that you have to understand that class name will be taken from the name that you gave in your code. So this is the one place how you create a class. Okay, fine, done. What's the other way? You will go to a developer console. I'm just closing all these things. You'll go to a developer console. Here you see different tabs. So here the name called a file, and then there you see a option to new. There are different things you can create a new things here. Apex class, trigger, visual force, component, static resource, application component, everything you see here. So we're going to talk about the Apex class for now. So file, new, and Apex class. Here we'll give the name. My second class I'm just giving, and okay, and it will come up with the what are all the required information. Like it automatically created a class for us with a basic syntax. So here, if you don't have anything, it treated as a with sharing. So even if you give it sharing or if you don't give also, it will be same as how it is. And once you have the class and you can write your variables and methods, everything and we can write in this class. And you can just, I'm trying to save here, whether it's trying to save it or not. Okay, now it's got saved. So here, um, um, just one thing left here as a basics was a constructor of it. So here, when you're trying to use the class as an object, if you see this piece of line, how we create an object using a class name and a this is called a constructor, or like adding a new instance of the class. That is a class name equal to a new class name as a empty brace. This is a default syntax while declaring a new object. Okay, fine. So I want to have a different constructor, or like um I will explain here. So the default constructor will be with the empty function braces. Apart from that, we can have our own constructors as well. That is, where it's going to be a public, always it has to be public, otherwise nobody can access public. For the constructor, we will not have any return type. This also look like a method or a function in the class, but which is not having a return type is called the constructor. And the method name is going to be same as the class name, like this. So if you save it, so if you have any issues in this class, that means the syntax is not right or like something wrong with your code, you will be look in this section called a problem section. There it will mention everything. So this is like if you write this also, if you don't write also, it will be considered as a empty braces for your object as a constructor. Okay, let's say I have a um, variable called a string and called a student name. Sorry, I will name the class as a student info. So here I give constructor name as a different name, right? Let's see how the error message is going to be. So public integer as a roll number. Okay, so I have two variables, student name and roll number. And so it's saying constructor name is a invalid. So I have to use the constructor name same as a class name, then only it will work. Okay, I'm trying to save it. Fine. Now I have one constructor, which is fine. But so again, how I'm going to use this class? So I have to create an object with this student info like this. I'm just giving an example over here. Student info like si equal to new student info like this I can create. But again, what I have to do, I have to do si dot student name equal to um, the student name, and then I have to give his roll number, and I have to give some XYZ for the roll number. This is how I have to do. But I have to do this for hundreds and thousands of data. Why I have to use these many lines of code? Can I do it in a single line? Because already I know these variables are already in the class and I want to just assign the values to it. So how I can do was, we can use a constructor with a parameterized. So this is called a parameterized constructor. There I'm going to pass the variables as a string as s name I'm going to give. So and then what I'm going to do was, I'm going to use this value s name, and I can copy the value to this class variable called a student name. So if I use this kind of a constructor, so I can have any number of constructors in this for the same class. This is without parameter, this is a single parameter, and I can have second parameter as well. That is called integer roll number. I'm going to use this roll number. Oh, are you able to see the letters, or like it's small for you? So
Yeah, Bala, we can see.
so we can pass the data as a parameters, and we can use, so how it will behave us when you are creating an object, and we're using the constructor. Let's say when I have this parameterized constructors, so what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to just pass the values. So here one parameter is just having a name as a constructor, so I can create like this, or I can use a second one with the two parameters saying, um, okay, I want to check how it is going to work. Okay, first of all, I will explain how it's going to work. When we are creating a object using this class, so it will going to this constructor and take the values and assign to the class variables. That's how it's going to work. Every single parameter, it will go here, it will double parameter, it will go here. No parameters, nothing will happen. Okay, tomorrow we'll see how we can debug how the values of it's being with using a different constructors. Okay, and